International Student Recruitment Manager at the University of Manchester. Can you all see me? Does everything look okay so far? Yeah? Okay, so let's see here. So I'm going to start with a self-introduction, and then I'm going to go into a presentation. So we should take about 25 minutes or something until about half past, and then we got some time for some questions and answers. So first of all, welcome everybody. So I am physically in Manchester. I'm looking northward, and about 3 miles away, 15 minutes on the bike, is the campus of the University of Manchester. You know what? I was just reminiscing a little bit, and I've been with the University of Manchester for nearly 12 years. It's going to be up to 12 years soon. And you know what? One of my first events overseas for the University of Manchester was the NAFA conference, and it was in Oakland, Oakland, California. And I think it was 2015. It must have been 2015, yeah. And it was my very first time to meet with the advisors, and I really enjoyed it. I really like meeting with the grad school advisors, the master's degrees that we have to offer at in the UK and at the University of Manchester. I think is just a fantastic thing for US grad school students. You know, 1 year masters, international experience, and so one of the main things that I think attracts those US scholars through the Marshall Commission and through other scholarship and awarding bodies in the US is the flagship research institutes. So I entitled a presentation. So I called it Flagship Research Institutes. I described it as the hidden treasures of postgraduate study in the UK. And that is because I truly think that there's a lot of wonderful research institutes to choose from, to base yourself in, to discover in the UK. And I'm going to introduce some of them to you. Along the lines, we're also going to speak with one of our graduates from our own Global Development Institute, and hey, a Marshall Scholar. It should be Marshall's with two L's. Marshall Scholar. So her name is Lydia, and we'll talk to Lydia soon. Okay. So for our presentation, I'm going to talk about some of the Marshall partner universities. I'm going to include them in the discussions as well. So I've got quotes and comments and some Q&A, and then I'm going to provide a spotlight on the Global Development Institute. Now, so this is why research institutes are so important to you. They sit alongside departments. So as an example, at the University of Manchester and at Exeter for my research as well too, in some of the slides they provided, you know, we have faculties in the UK and universities, just like US colleges and universities. But within faculties, there'll often be cross-disciplinary research institutes. So these research institutes, they sit along departments and they bring students and academics together in their subject disciplines. They're a little bit more kind of research-led postgraduate education. So students and people who join these are researchers themselves, and then research will form a big part of that education and often lead into PhDs and other things as well too. And so they're embedded in live research environments and in global challenges that we face. So some of the research institutes will focus on that in a moment. So these are a cohort identity. So a group of students, you know, 20, 50, 80 in a research institute that is beyond a single department. You have that interdisciplinary study that I mentioned, and you get research independence as an early kind of researcher part of your studies, and then bridging into your your career, I should say. And just at the bottom, it says a strong preparation for your PhD or policy or research careers that this really launches you onto. Finally, institutes are mission driven. So at University of Manchester, we use the phrase research beacons, and these will focus on things like climate change, health, inequality, culture, and the postgraduate students will benefit from shared facilities, the centers, the networks, visiting speakers, international collaborations, research seminars across disciplines. And these research institutes act as a bridge between academia and impact. What we mean by that is influencing or drafting policy, government work, industry work, non-government organizations, so NGOs and cultural institutions. You know what? Those are really important at Manchester and are living embodiment of those types of bridging between a research institute and a non-governmental organization or a cultural institution. I'll explain more in a moment, okay? So here's just a few quotes and comments. You know, I wanted to bring this to life with what people experience at the University of Manchester and studying in these research institutes. So the first person said that they felt like a junior researcher rather than just a master's student. So as you know, in the UK, we have a one-year master's degree, an MSc, an MA typically, and these are off-the-shelf taught degrees mainly. But these research institutes really bring that type of junior researcher concept to life, where you are plugged in with your own research and research in the institute. Now, academic members of staff also say things like research institutes give students the confidence to work across disciplines and to think globally from the very start of their postgraduate journey. So we'll find out more about how that is embodied at Manchester as well in a minute, okay? So um, I wanted to show the spotlight on our own research institutes at Manchester. So we have three faculties. Primarily, the largest one is the Faculty of Humanities. We have a Faculty of Science and Engineering, and we have a Faculty of Biology, Medicine, and Health. And so these institutes that I've listed, it's just a snapshot of a few, but they are either based in those faculties or they're really cross-disciplinary. Um, I'm going to highlight the one at the bottom, which is the Humanitarian Conflict Response Institute. This is one where our academics and students are literally on the front line of conflict response. When there is a disaster around the world, a tsunami, a volcano that is active, even war zones, our academics and the people, the staff members of HCRI, our Humanitarian and Conflict Response Institute, are literally on the ground within hours, helping to build peace and to support people in those environments. Now, I wanted to mention that beyond the University of Manchester, that the Marshall Partner Universities, I've included several of them here and they'll all include uh, research institutes. So I want to make sure that NAFA advisors and counselors are aware that these research institutes will be in these universities as well. Okay, so make sure that when you're advising grad school students, people looking for scholarships and awards, that you look a bit deeper than perhaps just the top level brand name of a Russell Group University or an Oxbridge or a Golden Triangle, that within each of these lies those kind of hidden treasures, all right? So I'm going to look a little bit closer at a couple. Let me see. Okay, here's the first one. This is the Shakespeare Institute. Now, I studied, unfortunately, not at this wonderful institute, but I did study English literature in Canada. I'm Canadian. I am from the province of Manitoba. And one of my academic professors, actually, I remember them speaking about the desire to study Shakespeare in the home of England and so forth. And when I was drafting this presentation, this is one of the first ones I thought of that I wanted to tell you about. So this is the Shakespeare Institute at the University of Birmingham. Birmingham is 2 hours south of Manchester. And I just did a little video. This is me scrolling through the website earlier today. I just thought this was so cool that they have, you know, Judi Dench, Shakespeare, My Family. They've got events. They've got hidden theatrical histories within that institute. So I think that that is an example of an institute that your students, the people that you advise are just going to absolutely love. And I think it's something that you got to tell them about. So if you got an English lit student, somebody interested in Shakespeare, and isn't that wonderful? You got to help them out. You know what? I got to pause for a second. Okay, okay, I'm back. I'm back. Okay. Sorry, that's my son. He's back from the park, and my other son's back from school having a shower. So I had to let them all in, and the little friends over. And isn't life wonderful? I wish I was young again. Okay, so that was the Shakespeare Institute. We're going to move on to the next one. Um, Now, this is the University of Exeter. So while I was preparing this presentation for everybody, I reached out to a couple of colleagues in the sector and said, hey, you got to send me some slides on your research institute. I want to put the spotlight on yourselves as well. So a good friend of mine, Nick, from the University of Exeter, came through. This is the website here. I took a screenshot of that. And Nick really wanted me to talk about the University of Exeter. So I wanted to give an example of another university. I would say the structure is similar to Manchester. So you can see that it says 5 research institutes spanning all 3 faculties and campuses. Now, Manchester, we've got 3 faculties as well. So every university is going to have, you know, pardon me, 1 to 3, 4, 5 faculties. At Manchester, we've got a single campus, but Exeter offers a few different locations. And Nick wanted me to highlight their Institute for Data Science and AI. That sounds interesting. AI is a big thing nowadays. Environment and Sustainability Institute, so another timely offering. The Global Systems Institute, the Living Systems Institute, and Societies and Cultures Institute. So it looks like Exeter, similar to Manchester, has research institutes spanning the sciences, engineering disciplines, data, computer sciences, the humanities. So, and then another example of how things are a cross-disciplinary approach to things. And then you'll see that at the bottom left, again, these research institutes will be linked to named master's degrees. So in this case, Exeter offers an MSc in Global Sustainability Solutions as part of their Global Systems Institute. So again, you know, my suggestion to NAFA counselors, advisors, is to just note within these research institutes, there are named master's degrees that will give the students the title of their postgraduate award when they come and study in England. Now, next, hang on, I think I've got, oh yeah, there we go. Nick asked me to share the contact at the University of Exeter. So if anybody wants to find out more, your contact would be a colleague named Tracy Moore. And then there's a generic email address there too. So we can make note of that. And that's if you want to reach out to Exeter, a wonderful university in the South. Although, you know what, I've got to admit, I've never visited, but you know what, I've heard wonderful things about it. Let's all go together one day, shall we? Now, here's the main event. This is the University of Manchester's Global Development Institute Spotlight. So at Manchester, let me see here. Our Global Development Institute, can't jump ahead too far. Our Global Development Institute, it started out actually when we're looking at development around the world, and we had a Nobel Prize winner as the head of the Global Institute, the first Black professor in the UK, and his name was Arthur Lewis. So that's how we started out with the Global Development Institute. We actually had the very first development conference that happened at the University of Manchester as well, too. I believe it was in the 1950s, and we've just gone from strength to strength from then, and assisting the world in development issues. Okay, so if you see on the right, we have a ranking of 5th in the world in the subject area. We have a network of graduates from around the world. 60 years of development studies, and our environment research is ranked first in the UK and second in the world. So that's another maybe key tip for advisors is these institutes are often highly ranked, whether that's in the UK, the Europe, or the world indeed. So that's another attraction for students. However, it's more than the rankings. It's about the actual impact that this has. And in our case, we're looking at 7 key areas, which is digital development, migration, refugees, and asylum, global urban futures, inclusive growth and distribution, politics, governance, and management, global production networks, trade and labor, and resources, environment, and development. Okay, at this time, I still have a couple more slides to talk about of the Global Development Institute, but I would like to introduce a student, a graduate, a Marshall Scholar. Lydia, do you mind coming in for a second and just tell us quickly maybe which of those areas you studied in and just give us maybe some broad overviews of the Global Development Institute, and then I'll proceed with some more slides and then we'll have some Q&A after. So did you want to come in, Lydia, for a moment?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Shane. Well, I would just, before kind of getting into the GDI, I would echo what Shane, some of the strengths of research institutes that Shane mentioned. I think one of the things that I really appreciated about Manchester's Global Development Institute, as well as, one of the key reasons why I chose Manchester was because the GDI wasn't just a department at the university, but it was kind of a thriving place where ongoing research is being done, and whereby those researchers and professors doing that work that is making an impact in the UK and outside the UK, they are inputting that, those learnings about their work, those learnings about the research into the classroom. So, and that looked like sharing it not only in the classroom, but as well as, for example, seminars that were available to not only GDI students, but anyone at the universities who was interested. So I really appreciated how it wasn't just a department that was teaching a set of subjects, but also kind of a thriving center of learning and learning from each other, et cetera. So, but in terms of the question about my experience, I kind of chose to stay, or I did choose to stay more general. So within the different master's courses available at or from the Global Development Institute, there's, well, now it's called Global Development. Back in my day, it was called International Development, but they've changed it to kind of recognize, that development is anywhere you are, not just, internationally out of the UK. But I did the MSc International Development, Global Development now, and I chose to stay with the general path because at that point that I wanted to do my master's, I hadn't yet decided on what stream of development that I wanted to do, because I was interested in the environment. I was interested in global inequality and poverty. I was interested in kind of politics. So what I appreciated was that I had a chance to stick with the kind of general stream and be able to take classes in these different fields. So I took a class on environment and development. I took a class on global poverty and inequality. There was a class on the political economy. And I really appreciated that flexibility to stay interdisciplinary, because actually that helped me choose which stream that I realized that I would want to kind of continue in the future. Shane, is that okay for now, or should I say more, or should I kind of wait until?
That's perfect. That's perfect. And I would ask Lydia, I would ask in the meantime that the colleagues on the call that they maybe think of a few questions for Lydia. Okay, so now is your preparation time and stuff. So I will proceed with a few more slides on the Global Development Institute. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, so we have some other international students. They've made some comments. So Richard has said, coming from India, studying MSc Development, Economics and Policy at GDI, gave me a perfect blend of economics and public policy, world-class teaching, and a truly global experience that shaped my confidence and career ambitions. And then our good friend on the right here, Grishma, She has said that she did an MSc in Human Resource Management. So that's another thing to understand is kind of the breadth that these degrees give, whether that's development or economics, and then moving into human resource management under the umbrella of international development. Grishma says that studying at GDI broadened my horizons from gaining deep insights into HR through practical projects to experiencing incredible cultural diversity. The support from my professors and friendships across the globe made my time in Manchester truly transformative. So, we have talked to a few students and heard what they had to say. And let me see. This is a slide I wanted to show the breadth of the different subjects within a research institute within global development. So we offer human resource development, management and implementation of development, management and information systems, organizational change and development, and global development itself that Lydia mentioned earlier. So these lead to different pathways to specialize in chosen fields, which may include development management, environment and climate change, globalization, trade and industry, migration, mobility and displacement, politics, governance and development policy, poverty and inequality. So I think recently we had up to 17 of these named degrees within global development. And indeed, many, if not all of them, included the option for a kind of a field trip. I think destinations at the time when I did my research was Cyprus and South Africa was a destination, but maybe we'll find out from Lydia if she had some more. So there's after your studies as well too. So when people graduate, they we have Avinash, sorry, who has done an MSc in Management and Information Systems and Change and Development. So he says that the MSc helped me bridge socio-technical approaches to systems and reinforce strong foundations for my IT career. Today, I bring expertise to team management, risk mitigation, and strategic planning, streamlining my contributions and adding real value to my organization. And then we have a list of job titles and employers. So titles can range from a trade capture analyst, innovation manager, project manager, consultant, a policy advisor. And more specifically, our graduates work with UNICEF, PwC, the United Nations, the British Council, and Inter-American Development Bank. I want to switch my screen temporarily to show you actually where we have within our Humanitarian Conflict Response Institute, we have a directory of jobs that are available that people go to. So this is something that research institutes will often offer to your students and graduates information on where they can look for jobs in humanitarian fields, welfare fields, migration, NGOs and organizations. And so Manchester has quite a few to offer. We also have a career guide for our humanitarian conflict response that you can see here that gives a spotlight on NGOs and charities that they may work with, that shows the postgraduate programs and where people go, whether that's volunteering or experience, includes alumni case studies, um, more students, where they go, and advice from the top. So when you are advising your students, make sure that you consider the end destination and where they might end up in their chosen field. I'm going to try to get back and navigate back to my happy little presentation. There we are. And okay, so I'm going to pause there. So that was my quotes and comments section. I included the students and the graduates. And now I'm going to bring in Lydia one more time. I'm going to pause now and ask for some of the audience to share some questions that they might have, either for me talking about research institutes or named master's degree, application, admissions. If you have any questions about that, it's my areas of expertise. And then maybe if you have some student or career questions, Lydia could be the best person for that. But why don't we pause and hear from Lydia? Lydia, you know what? Why don't you tell us now about your work and your postgraduate kind of career search and what you've been doing since you finished your degree at the University of Manchester? And then we'll ask people to make their questions after that. So Lydia, over to you for a moment, okay?
Yeah, thanks, Shane. So interestingly enough, kind of rewinding to when I was trying to choose what course I wanted to do and was thankfully able to get the Marshall for it. I knew that from my high school or undergraduate degree, I was most interested in several topics that I later found out fell under the umbrella of development, such as, again, as I mentioned before, in the environment, inequality, poverty, kind of the political economy. And so this course at Manchester was really helpful in helping me to learn more of what those industries looked like, as well as not just theory, but also practical, because there were modules that offered practical kind of coursework on what it is like to work in certain parts of the development industry. And it's through that that I actually realized that the development industry, as we tend to think of it, actually isn't quite what I necessarily wanted to go into. But the degree was still helpful in letting me know what the different strands that I was interested in, what those looked like and what the options were. And so now, fast forward to kind of after the master's, I knew that from the master's, what I found most interesting was work and coursework that focused on kind of community development and community work. So from that, kind of went job searching, got help from the Career Center at Manchester, because even after you graduate, you can get support from the Career Center and access kind of the job database, etc. And so I came down to London, where I currently am living and working, to start at a research organization that did social research. So I was a qualitative researcher for them for a few months, and then pivoted to where I'm working now. So I'm working at an educational charity that supports refugees and asylum seekers to get into education. And I think that really struck my interest. It struck a balance in my interest of supporting underrepresented communities, disadvantaged communities, marginalized communities, in a stream that I found particularly interesting within GDI, so education. But at the same time, it wasn't the kind of development work that I identified that wasn't quite suitable for me. So it's very much kind of in-person work, in-person support that I've really enjoyed. So yeah, that's kind of my path after the master's, and now I'm living and working in London at a as a as someone working at an educational charity here in London.
Wonderful. That sounds like a great next step for you, Lydia, and we wish you all the best in your future career as well, too, of course. Now, how about from the audience and the people on the other side of the call? Do you have any questions for myself or want to hear a little bit more from Lydia about the teaching and learning in the UK or anything along those lines?
Shane,
Yo.
we had a couple of people joining a bit later. I was wondering if it might be possible just to revisit a couple of slides, just a few words about the research institutes at Manchester and perhaps more generally in the UK.
Okay, let's go back and okay. So um, yeah, so at the University of Manchester, so we have research institutes in the Urban Institute, Institute of Education. You know what? We have, I'm going to just go quickly to a slide on or the website on Manchester on uh, Manchester. Give me 1 second. Research Institute. Here we go. Now you're going to be impressed by this. Now, what are you ready? Is everybody ready? Look at all of these research institutes here at the University of Manchester. I think we have nearly 20 research institutes. I'm going to quickly tell you about 3 of the best ones. Are you ready? Now, we have got the National Graphene Institute. Now, if you've heard of the thinnest, strongest material in science, it's a layer of carbon called graphene, right? And we had 2 Russian professors, scientists who isolated graphene for the first time at the University of Manchester. And guess what? They won the Nobel Prize for that. I think it was in 2010. And we were looking at the commercial applications of that research through an institute called the National Graphene Institute. And even more, the coolest thing about this is that when presidents and prime ministers and diplomats come and visit the UK, one of the very first places that they come to, they skip over all those fantastic old historical places and they come straight to Manchester to go to the National Graphene Institute to learn more about this product. One of the coolest applications recently that I heard about, read about, overheard it whispered in the corridors was concrete. So they have found a way to strengthen concrete using graphene instead of rebar or asbestos or whatever it used to be in there or something like that. So that's one application, a real world example where you take research, commercialize it, and make the world a better place. The other cool ones that we have are, let me see, the Henry Royce Institute, which is based around material science. So Manchester, we are a leader in material science, often around things like clothing, fabric, sports clothing, textiles. And then another institute that we have is Manchester Cancer Research Institute. So we're another world leader in Cancer Research Institute, and a lot of kind of Marshall, Fulbright scholars, research individuals come to study cancer research at the University of Manchester as well. And the last one that I'm going to highlight is the hang on a second, I just saw it, is the John Rylands Institute. Is it there? I think it's going to be there. But we have the John Rylands Institute, which is a library based around our own collections of wonderful books and materials. There it is. It's right by my thing there. That's why I couldn't see it. John Rylands Research Institute. And you know what? We have hosted NAFA counselors before and other counselors before. And we always feature the John Rylands Research Institute. It's based around a library in Manchester City Centre, which is one of our 4 cultural assets at the university. It was built in, I think, bang on 1900 by, if you can believe it, people from Cuba, the Enrica Rylands. And it was a tribute to John Rylands, her husband. And we had some of the highlights were an excerpt from the Bible, so an old gospel. A fragment of it is housed there. The ones that our US counselors who visited enjoyed the most, we had books on the Audubon Society. I hope I've said that right. You know, the Bird Society. And these books are the size of like 3 coffee tables put together. They are massive. It takes like 2 people side by side or opposite each other to lift the pages of these books and everything. And they're very colorful birds and so forth. The other cool thing that is at the John Rylands Research Institute is the Walt Whitman collection. So in the 1800s, if you can believe it, in the early 1900s, there was a group of individuals in the northwest of England that were really into Walt Whitman. You know, the New York poet. What does he say? I celebrate myself, and what I assume, you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me is good belongs to you. I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. So that's the beginning of his Leaves of Grass, Walt Whitman. So some individuals were so moved by that and other writings of Walt Whitman that they had his hat his chapeau. They had a lock of his hair, and they had several first editions of that little green book, Leaves the Grass, and some other letters and other writings. So I just think that's a fantastic thing. This is the image of John Ryland's library indeed. And when your students come to study at our university, whether they're based within the John Rylands Institute or not, they can use that space that you see in front of you to actually study, to sit, read. They have access to all of the archives and books there. They can check them out. They can observe them, so to speak, use them in their research. And we do attract people, PhD students, professors, academics from all around the world for not only that, but also the research institutes that I've highlighted there. I'm going to go back one more time to my slides and just give more of a shout out to our good friends at the university. So Marshall Partners here, I've got colleagues from universities throughout England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, places like Durham, Newcastle, Warwick. So all of these universities will have their own research institutes. I talked earlier about the Shakespeare Institute, and what a delight it would be to study that. So any English lit experts that you have, any Shakespeare experts, this would be a wonderful home for them should they want to do research in that field. And then we also went to the University of Exeter. This is the homepage for them. And they feature 5 research institutes across 3 of their faculties and campus, spanning things like societies and cultures, environment and sustainability. So I think the point of this is that all of these universities have the hidden gems that is research institutes at their universities with benefits and features of all of these Marshall Partner universities. So they're for you, for your students, for your grad school students to uncover, to discover, and to look at where their research interests and their study lies. And they will find a great home in England at a Russell Group University, in the UK, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland is the home for them. And I truly wish them all the best in their research. Their one-year master's degree, they'll find everything that they're looking for in these wonderful universities. Ta-da! There we go. Hey, I see a hand up. I see a hand up. A question from the floor. Hello, welcome.
Hi, Christina McIntyre from Virginia Tech. As I advise students, culturally it can be different depending on the discipline, but also the country. Should prospective students be reaching out to faculty they would like to do research with?
Yeah, okay, so in particular, if they're looking for maybe like an MPhil, an MRes, something maybe leading to a PhD, it's very important for them to have like a research proposal and a linked a linked academic. So if they do have kind of that overlapping research area that is something of interest to them and is maybe a research beacon or part of a strategic priority for a faculty or a university, then those individuals can really speed up the process and make it really beneficial for everybody for studying and for doing their degrees. So by all means, they can reach out to academic researchers, and most universities in Manchester in particular, we do have like microsites dedicated to finding, a research advisor. Mm-hmm. If the other thing to bear in mind is that the UK, one of the great things about studying in the UK is a lot of these master's degrees are off the shelf, which means that a top master's degree is a 1 year in duration, 1 calendar year, and all of the credits, all of the modules are already put together for somebody. So all they have to do is select the subject title that is most closely aligned to the area that they want to study, and that will already have the credits, the modules that they need to complete a 1 year top master's degree. So really it's both of those examples, that they have an option of off the shelf 1 year top masters, or if they're looking for that more MPhil, MRes, And those are just different master's degree that have a more of a research component to them. Then there will be academic supervisors that would help them along the lines of that, and then make sure it's the best match and that institute or university is the home for them.
Thanks, Grant.
Any other questions? Any questions about timelines? I mean, remember the UK typically has a single intake at most universities. It starts in September. It goes a full calendar year. And they're doing a lot of that dissertation research over the spring, summer months. There's usually modules within that degree that are focused on research or research skills. So they're actually taught how to do, quantitative, qualitative research, run questionnaires, run group research questions that they have for that will inform the research that they do at university. You know what? My wife did a master's of education. That's what brought me to Manchester in way back in 2004. And she loved doing her degree at the University of Manchester. And I remember her doing those research modules and her drafting questionnaires and her running focus groups. And you know what? It was so good that whenever I need to do some research within my job and my role at the University of Manchester, she is now the expert from having gone through that process herself. And she can tweak the things, the questionnaires that I draft and tell me maybe what I could improve or what might be maybe a little bit better for extracting the information that I need. And I remember how good she did in that and how much she enjoyed it. Another question. We got a question from the floor.
Okay. More about like life in Manchester. Students, are they like living on campus, or how challenging is it to find an affordable flat or apartment?
I love that question. You know what, Lydia, I'm going to make a start and then maybe we'll hear from Lydia's own experience. The coolest thing at the University of Manchester and most British universities is we have an accommodation guarantee. Okay, so we have over 8,000 rooms available. And you know what? That is so important. I mentioned before that I am Canadian. I grew up in Vancouver, and I know that UBC is a fantastic university, but I also know that it's quite hard to get accommodation. And I also the university I went to for a while, Simon Fraser University, they had very limited accommodation on top of a mountain, and I had to commute to university. And it was still a good experience, a wonderful teaching and learning environment, but there was some challenges that made. And at the University of Manchester, we are able to guarantee accommodation for international students. And we have lots available that's within either on campus or in the city center or just on the edge of campus, or maybe closer to some playing fields, some sports grounds and stuff. So we have a lot to offer students. It's really up to them. I always say that there's 3 choices that they have to make. Number 1 is your location. Number 2 is whether or not you have like an ensuite toilet shower kind of arrangement. And number 3 is whether you have a meal plan or do your own cooking. I always recommend, especially for grad school students that have been through it all already, do your own cooking. You'll have your own refrigerator or section of a refrigerator that you can lock up and everything. And so groceries are cheap in the UK, especially compared to Canada. For me, growing up anyways, groceries are a lot cheaper. They still are. The other special thing you should remember about accommodation in Manchester specifically, and I think the UK in general, is you get your own study bedroom. So a single room, you don't have to share with a roommate that's like an arm's reach away, lying on a bed or something like that. Your own privacy, your own 4 walls, and often that includes a toilet and a shower as well too. Lydia, I think she's still there. Lydia, did you want to come in with any of your own accommodation experience quickly?
Yeah, just to echo what Shayne said, it's very the accommodation options in Manchester are plentiful, and I think it partly helps that it's very much a university city, because besides the University of Manchester, there's at least 3 other unis, so MMU, Salford, Music College. So it's very much a student-oriented city, as well as being a thriving, metropolitan city on its own. So in terms of my own experience, I had 2 other peers, Marshall peers, who went to Manchester in my cohort, and they went to student accommodation, which turned out to be really good, affordable. I decided to opt to private accommodation, and what that looks like is in the area of the university finding a private room to rent. And so I ended up renting with 3 other lovely postgrad students in a private house 15 minutes away from the university. That was also ended up being very affordable. And Manchester has a lot of those as well. What I really appreciated is that there's a website called Manchester Student Homes, and certain other universities have parallel websites like this, whereby it lists private accommodation that, while it's not university student accommodation, it's kind of sanctioned by the university and it's reviewed by the university. So it's still private, and students still need to kind of do their research in which ones are kind of do the research in terms of choosing. But it was nice because it was sanctioned by the university, it was reviewed by the university, and that's how I found my flatmates and the accommodation there. So I really appreciated how there weren't just student accommodation options, but also a lot of private accommodation options in the area that were just as affordable.
Thank you, Lydia. Yeah, and Lydia mentioned Manchester Student Homes website. So what that is a vetted landlord system that the universities in Manchester, so that's us, Manchester Metropolitan University, the University of Salford, and the Royal Northern College of Music, they banded together to create this kind of entity that supports students who are like a single application, and you need like less references, and it just streamlines the process as well too. So look for that in other university cities as well when advising students should they want to go private. Another question from the floor. Mary, is that you? Can't hear you quite yet, Mary.
Muted.
Oh, there. Thank you. I wanted to ask Lydia, when you were selecting the programs to which you wish to apply, did you reach out to the faculty members at the school and ask them about how you might fit into the program, whether there was room for you in their research, things like that? I know that the Marshall doesn't necessarily require a letter of affiliation the way the Fulbright does, but is that something you did and would advise other Marshall applicants to do?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mary. Really good question. So yes, short answer is yes, I did. I remember I reached out to a wonderful academic professor who teaches in the environmental stream within the Global Development Institute. And that was mainly to, as you said, to get a better picture from an academic's perspective within the GDI, the Global Development Institute, as to whether their methodology of teaching, their approach, their perspective of teaching kind of aligned with what I wanted to do. Because as I mentioned earlier, I knew that I wanted to study an interdisciplinary master's that would allow me to take classes on different fields like the environment. And so I really wanted to get a perspective from within the institute as to what that actually looked like in terms of teaching. And so I had a meeting with him, and he, kind of answered all of my questions relating to what that looks like within the institution. Because the website, as plentiful of information as it provides, is one perspective, when hearing an academic's perspective who works at the institute and does teaching and research is kind of provides another insight into what it's actually like. So I would definitely recommend it from the side of choosing whether that university and whether that institution is good for you. But it was also something that I could mention in my Marshall application. So I mentioned that I, had contacted the researcher and kind of gotten more insights into why I wanted to study at Manchester. I think that kind of having that conversation, as well as other conversations, solidified why I wanted to study at Manchester, which bolstered my Marshall application, I feel. So I would definitely recommend that to prospective applicants. I guess to kind of follow on in terms of what I would recommend prospective applicants to do when choosing their course, I also reached out to back then, as a prospective student, I reached out to current students at Manchester through a program called UniBuddy. So I think you can access UniBuddy through the Manchester site, but there also might be an independent UniBuddy. I think there's an independent UniBuddy site as well, whereby students or prospective students can create a free account and then chat to different kinds of students at the institutions that they're looking at. So you might find that there aren't students available at from every course that you might want to look into, but I think there was someone who was studying, if not global development, something adjacent, where I could ask them more about what it was like, more of how it was like to study at Manchester, what the vibe was of the city, of the teaching, how diverse it was on the ground, and that again provided another angle from which to judge, okay, Manchester isn't the right choice for me. So speaking to current students through UniBuddy, I also happened to have two professors at my undergraduate university who are from the UK and could kind of speak to from their academic perspective within the academia world, which universities tended to be best for the subject that I wanted to study, because they were professors that with which I had studied poverty and international sociology, more or less. So they also provided a nice insight into, or a nice perspective into, okay, this institute is really strong in this, whereas this institute is kind of better for this. So if prospective students have professors at their US institution that happen to have a view in terms of, okay, for this field of study, these universities we know tend to be quite strong in this. If prospective applicants might have access to professors like that, I would also recommend them talking to those professors as well.
Okay, I think we're near perhaps the end. I'll just do the last slide here with my contact details, and then I'll go over to Michael in a minute, and then maybe some last questions if anybody has anything else to offer. I just wanted to say thank you very much from myself. My name is Shayne. I'm the International Student Recruitment Manager for North America at the University of Manchester. You know what? I am eager to visit all of you folks in the US to meet up with you, either at your institutions themselves. I'd love to do a presentation session to a group of students interested in global development, HCRI, any of our flagship institutes, and I would be flying the flag for all of the Marshall partner universities in the UK. So I'm happy to talk about other universities as well too. I hope to attend NAFA next year. And this coming July 1st, we are indeed a host university, a destination for the NAFA, the UK study tour, I believe, this coming year. So hopefully we can meet in person then. I'd like to say a big thanks to Lydia and to Michael as well, too. My contact details are there. And then I will pass over to Lydia for one more comment and then Michael to close. So Lydia, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to include, I mean, I really appreciate how Shayne is including other Marshall partner universities, but I will just kind of add a big encouragement for candidates to consider. Well, I'm biased for Manchester. Manchester is such a lovely, not only university, but a place to study. It's such a fun and vibrant city in which to do a master's. But I think I would encourage candidates, because a lot of candidates who consider the Marshall Scholarship, they tend to look at London and Oxford and Cambridge, which, completely fair, they're great places to study, very prestigious places to study. However, now, especially now that I'm living and working in London, I am really thankful that my first experience of the UK was not in, what sometimes is called the Golden Triangle of Oxbridge and London. I think it was really lovely to be not only at this wonderful university, but to get an experience of the UK that wasn't London and Oxbridge, because Manchester has such a character of its own. And I think that was all part of the more cultural aspect of moving to a new country, studying in a new place that I really enjoyed. But also, Manchester is such an international, there's so many international students. So I got to meet and learn from so many amazing people from around the world that really, I think, beyond the classroom, enriched my experience there. And yeah, so that's kind of a little last plug for Manchester and or just places outside of London and Oxford and Cambridge.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Shayne and Lydia, for this incredibly engaging presentation. We certainly learned a lot about research institutes at Manchester and more generally. Thank you, everybody else, for attending the presentation today. Apologies for those who got the link a bit late. There does seem to have been a bit of a delay with some sign-ups to come through. So again, apologies for that, but thanks again to Shayne for revisiting some of the material and in fact expanding on it. So this is it for today's Marshall Monday session. The recording will be on the website soon. There will also be a short blog post, and next week we'll stay in the north of England. In fact, we'll go to Newcastle University. One important note about next week's session: next Monday is a public holiday in the UK, so even though it's still called Marshall Mondays, next week's session will be on Tuesday, the 5th of May. Thank you very much, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.